Welcome to Fringe Pop 321, the show that believes the world is stranger than we think, but thinking shouldn't be strange. Most people have heard of Bigfoot, upright, huge, bipedal humanoid primate, 7 to 10 feet tall, also known as Sasquatch or Yeti. For example, this is the Shipton Ward footprint. This is where the term Bigfoot really comes from, the size of the feet. This was a photograph taken at 18,000 feet, and the foot is 13 inches long. You might think, big deal. Okay, we've seen all this before, lots of fuzzy pictures. Does anybody really ever see Bigfoot? For real? I mean, honestly? Well, let's find out. The reality is that Bigfoot or Yeti or Sasquatch has been seen all over North America. Take a look at this map. It's US and Canada. And the darker portions of the map are the greater percentage of sightings. So on the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, this is where Yeti or Bigfoot or Sasquatch has been sighted most often. Now, do we have a hoax, or is it misidentification, or is it real? Dr. Jeff Meldrum believes that Bigfoot is actually a Gigantopithecus blacki, an extinct ape that could have grown to as much as 10 feet tall. But is there any real evidence for that? And is there any real evidence for Bigfoot presently? Do we have DNA, for instance? Well, some people think that we do, and that's the subject of this episode of Fringe Pop. So who was it that claimed that Bigfoot DNA had actually been found? Well, in 2012, DNA Diagnostics, a veterinary laboratory headed by Dr. Melba Ketchum, a veterinarian, issued a press release claiming that they had found DNA proof that Bigfoot was indeed genuine. Ketchum asserted that the DNA showed Bigfoot was, quote, a human relative that arose approximately 15,000 years ago as a hybrid cross of modern Homo sapiens with an unknown primate species, unquote. Ketchum wanted her DNA testing recognized by governmental authorities in an effort to recognize Sasquatch as an indigenous people, that's her quote again, who should be treated as such under law so that they could not be trapped or hunted. Since there was no big announcement in 2012 or since about Bigfoot being real and as indigenous relative to Homo sapiens, you're likely wondering, what's up? Was the DNA evidence real and ignored or bogus? Well, that's what we want to try to find out. You can find Ketchum's full study posted on our website, but in layman's terms, Ketchum's lab sequenced 20 whole mitochondrial genomes, something Ketchum called, quote, next generation sequencing, unquote, allegedly produced Sasquatch DNA samples. But what does that mean? How does she know? Well, again, in layman's terms, the mitochondrial DNA came from modern Homo sapiens. Nuclear DNA was described as novel, and thus belonging to an unknown entity, quote, related to Homo sapiens and other primate species. In other words, the DNA that didn't match Homo sapiens was considered by Ketchum to be Sasquatch because it was unidentified. DNA is naturally pretty complicated stuff, but even the release of the study was not as simple as it sounds. All of this became known by virtue of a press release. Scientists doing this sort of work usually publish their work under peer review. Dr. Ketchum had planned to do this, but her study was leaked to the public on Facebook by Dr. Igor Burtsev of the Russia-based International Center of Hominology. Worldwide media coverage and controversy ensued. Ketchum's past involvement with disreputable Bigfoot researchers was exposed in the process, hurting her credibility. So to be fair to Ketchum, we're going to stick with what she actually did and what she actually could control. Ketchum eventually published her study in a journal that she created on a homemade website. Now that drew increased attention and skepticism. The Skeptical Inquirer wrote, As for the paper itself, it was incomprehensible to those without specialized training in genomics or forensics. Now, the Skeptical Inquirer was later quoted by Doubtful News, a blog that is devoted to anomalous phenomena. They wrote, "The few experienced geneticists who viewed the paper reported a dismal opinion of it, noting it made little sense." The Skeptical Inquirer later said, quote, "The DNA sequences did indeed contain matches to human chromosome 11, a lot of undetermined DNA, and some that in part match to other animals. Thus, the whole sequences do not resemble any known animal and are contradictory with evolutionary biology." Now, that last statement is especially problematic, as any animal should have discernible genetic traces of some animal history. This led to the assessment of incompetence on Ketchum's part or an outright hoax. The most devastating critique accessible to a popular audience is that of Dr. David Winter, a PhD in evolutionary biology. In other words, the ideal person to assess the study. Part of the DNA sequence matches human chromosome 11 very well, but 60% doesn't match anything on Earth. The rest matches a variety of animals, such as a panda, a dog, or a bear. Now, Winter also noted that some of the sequences were far too short to be the result of hybridization. That fact alone makes Ketchum's claim implausible. Another PhD in genetics noted, quote, "The phylogenetic tree in figure 16 of Ketchum's paper is inconsistent with known primate phylogeny and generally makes no sense," unquote. That just isn't good. So do we have Bigfoot DNA? Honestly, what can you say? The DNA results are fraught with problems, and they are vulnerable to severe criticism. Tune in next time to Fringe Pop 321. In the meantime, please visit our website for show notes and sources for this episode, because what you know may not be so.